Hi, Andrew. Am I live over Zoom? Great. Welcome. Let's begin. Hi. So happy to see everyone here today. New friends, old friends, colleagues, new folks, new faces, old faces. It's just, I didn't mean to. It just happened. Good. What are we doing? We're talking about future-proofing emerging tech in post-secondary environments today, and this is part of the emerging media community of practice. And in a way, it's to keep it going, to sustain its continued evolution, really, and how we start to, because this is the theme, is how do we continue to support each other? As each of us, whether we're student, staff, admin, in leadership, I look at Farhad, IT, whether we are educators, whether we are quasi-retired, it doesn't matter, right? We all value emerging technology development. Oh yeah, I should have looked at Maria too with retired. Yeah, so how are we to do that? And how can we support each other in sustaining emerging technology development in post-secondary? So that's the big research question of the day. This is why I've gathered us all today with Saeed. And it really is to extend our network as well, and for you to each network with one another, and for us to announce new partnerships, which are going beyond just our main focus, which has been provincial here and also national. So we begin, and we begin with a land acknowledgement. And I thought, for those who are joining us, I think most people here are familiar with acknowledging the land from which we are on. And I just was thinking about it today, and I was, especially for those who are not that familiar with it, why we do that. And it really is affirming place. It's affirming that we are on land that we were not really invited to colonize. And it's important, I feel, and when I start to see all these different events at SIGGRAPH, I miss it. And I'll tell you why I miss it. I miss the affirmation that I feel is incredibly important to continue stating at the beginning of any public event that we're engaged with. And it doesn't matter whether you're in the geographical boundaries known as the Canada, or if you're from the same in the US, or if you're on the continent of North America, or if you're in Africa, or if you're in Europe, or in Asia. It does not matter. What's important, and to me, and I feel is important, is for us to continue to affirm this, and to continue to say it out loud, that we are today on Musqueam and Hunkamanam speaking Musqueam specifically, Squamish, Stolo, and Tsleil-Waututh territories. And especially because if you're not familiar with the downtown core, you just have to look, where am I situated? Right here, over there, and you'll see ongoing protest, right? And it's an ongoing protest of the history of genocide that Indigenous nations in this country have had to contend with, have had to deal with, have had to fight for not just reconciliation, but to fight for rights and human rights. So there is the beginning. So this is our agenda today. It's going to be super cash in a way. It's really about trying to talk with one another, extend our networks, and to figure out how do we sustain this. The first brainstorm will be all about trying to understand the gaps and obstacles that we have all faced or that we're currently facing. The second is more forward thinking in terms of, well, what are the solutions? And how can we share good, bad ideas in terms of moving forward with that? So this is our agenda. And now the why are we here is important. And for that, I will share the why are we here with Saeed Dinatkar, who's the executive producer at UBC Studios and a colleague at UBC, and so much more, also with the Emerging Media Lab, through which we've both been with others present here today, that we've been really trying to build. So Saeed, tell us the 2-hour history in 2 minutes of the emerging media community of practice.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. Most of you are part of this community already, so I don't need to repeat that. But just to give you a little bit of background about what happened and why we did it. When we started, I think it was 2016 at UBC, and a group of faculty and staff and some students were trying to basically do the same thing, trying to see how we can use emerging tech media in education and research. But then we realized we're really all working in silos. So we asked everyone to get together at UBC Studios at the time, and then get this. We started calling it VR AR user group at UBC, and then slowly we connected with our colleagues from other universities, SFU, UVEC, CAPU, Quantum University, Polytechnic, I should say, University, and of course CDM, and Emily Carr, of course. I'm trying to not miss a name. But there's more. I mean, we had people who were not necessarily connected to a specific institution. They're coming from community, small startups in Vancouver, and they want to be part of this movement. And we always try to make sure we are not reinventing the wheel when we're trying to do something for the first time, because everyone thinks they're doing it for the first time. But as we all know, VR, AR, and XR has been there for more than 30 years. So that was the beginning. And then we decided to basically expand the network and go beyond even Metro Vancouver. Now we have friends and colleagues from east side of the continent who are joining us at MCOP sessions. I don't see any of them connected at the moment, but they're planning to connect. So they are also part of the community, and they're very eager to join the network. And just recently, after the iLearn conference, iLearn stands for Immersive Learning Research Network, and Jonathan Richter, who's the president of nonprofit who runs the conference, is also very eager to basically expand in this network and then join forces. Their focus is in research, and we can really have lots of very positive overlap and complement each other. And that's, hopefully Jonathan is going to connect us in a moment, and I'm going to ask him to talk about it when he does. But that's it. I mean, 2 minutes, is that enough?
Oh, it's good.
I can talk about this for
I know you can go for 2 hours, actually. No, it's all good. Yeah, so a little bit of the why you're here is it's also good to ask that of yourselves, right? Why are we here? And there's so many different reasons and purposes why it's important to support each other in developing emerging technology. Okay, yes, for improving teaching, cool, for research purposes. But there are a multitude of other types of reasons why we're engaged in it. Myself, I'm prone to more about the learning outcomes and the competencies that can be developed through the process of creating emerging technology. And that comes from my history collaborating with Larry at the Master of Digital Media program. And that's more my bias on the use of emerging technology. So more as a medium of learning, rather than being so concerned about the final deliverable or the final product.
John's here.
John, great. So a little bit more of the why are we here at this time and in this context. So first, I am going to zoom in to John. Hope John can hear me and he's ready. I think I promised him a prompt, but I'm probably, oh, there, he came on. So John came on. Maybe we can pin him, Andrew. And John is on the SIGGRAPH show floor. And as many of you know, it's happening right now, this giant conference of computer graphics and interactive. I don't know, the language keeps changing in terms of the website, how they describe it. But John is an awesome PhD student at the School of Interactive Arts and Technology at SFU, a close collaborator with myself and also with Bernard Riquet, who is his immediate supervisor. John, do you want to give us a little bit of a show and tell? I'll give you a minute and a half. That's all you get for star stuff. Take it away.
All right. So yeah, I'm coming to you live from SIGGRAPH's Immersive Pavilion here. Lots of wonderful exhibits that you can see. I am a PhD candidate at Simon Fraser University at the School of Interactive Art and Technology. And I'm exploring ways of encouraging social connection and self-expression in, can you start? I need. Yes. Sorry, we're just between users. Lots of questions, so want to make sure I have something to show you. So they're just getting set up, and so Star Stuff is a VR experience that I created with this aim. I created it during the pandemic. As normally I work with touch, and this was a time where we, of course, didn't have that as an option to be able to go and have installations that featured touch. And it was an opportunity to explore sort of an intuitive design process where the whole thing actually came from this figure that you see. I started drawing some triangles on these abstract bodies that it was creating for a different experience, and it looked kind of like a constellation. And from that, I thought, what would it be like to be a galaxy? And then what would it be like to meet one? And so here, if I can just turn my camera around, is our lovely SIGGRAPH booth. We have Alex, who's in the experience, and a unknowing volunteer who just joined. Can you see your hands? There we go. So they can see each other, and this is what they're seeing.
Nice. This is so great, John. John, can you tell us a little bit too about where Star Stuff is going? Can you reveal that?
Yeah, of course. So Star Stuff, sorry, it's busy in here. Star Stuff, like I said, started off as this sort of unexpected exploration. And for once, I just kind of let the design go where it needed to. And it's turned into my most successful artwork to date. So it's here at SIGGRAPH. It's been shown at an event at the Center for Digital Media last year, and it will be at the H.R. Macmillan Space Center here in Vancouver starting in October as a screen and connect-based experience. It's also in the home meditation experience as a mindful escape for the VR meditation app, but you can also get it for free on App Lab.
Awesome. Thank you, John. We're going to say bye. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Thanks for taking the time. We'll see you on the floor.
Okay.
Cool.
For those of you that don't have a full conference pass, $500.
Nice. So you can see, so allow me to connect the dots a little bit with John before we introduce Jonathan. Wow, two Johns. Wow. So I wanted him to say, okay, so where's this going? Because that for me, that's another reasoning, right? It's supporting emerging tech. It's come out of a university. He's put a lot of time and investment in it with other collaborators, and it's going to go into the planetarium for more public exposure, which is really good for all of us and for the community in order to build those types of user experiences that we all love to create. So now, Saeed, would you do the honors of introducing Jonathan?
I was really hoping that Jonathan would be doing this, but I'll do what I can.
Oh, he's not here.
He's not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. No, we can just mention iLearn briefly.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I did, but so the iLearn, as you know, they have this group of international researchers that get together every year at a conference, and this year was in Vienna in May, and but they are planning to do more in between conferences, and that's why they're besides doing what they're doing, they also want to couple with emerging media community practice. And then, as you know, we have our almost monthly sessions that we try to keep up every year. And then that's where we share ideas, and sometimes we have training sessions like workshops. So the idea is to do this together, bring our resources together, and they also kindly offer to give us access to their virtual space. So that's going to happen soon, hopefully going forward. We're trying to rescue someone. Yeah, so that's it. And I hope that John will be able to talk about it because I know he can do a better job. And that's for me.
Okay, thank you. So let's move forward with the meat of why we're here. And that is to start to brainstorm ideas as to how we are going to engage and support one another. In order to do that, this is my one big objective of the day. I have asked 3 amazing MDM students, Maher, MZ, and Brenda, to support and co-facilitate along with amazing colleagues, Yvonne Cody, Larry Bafia, as well as Farhad Dastur. And so what we're going to do is we're going to attempt for those people who are coming in through Zoom to magically connect with people who are in person, magically facilitated by the teams that I just announced. And we're going to try to do that spread out in the space. Right? I know. It sounds crazy. So I just wanted to briefly introduce, and by introduce I mean like pop up their words of what they said about themselves on the screen, just for our facilitators of the day. So Farhad has an extensive background at Kwantlen and it's just an amazing colleague. And I really appreciate Farhad. And this tells more than his Kwantlen bio, so don't even go there, because on it there's a quote saying, "I really love to supervise students." Isn't that what, like, is this, like, did you even know that's there? Okay, now you know. But this is so if you want to be impressed by Farhad, go here, right? And you can see all of the things he's done, from Dean of Arts, Pro Tem, Associate Dean of Arts, really. And when it says principal investigator of KPU's virtual reality app, you can also say principal founder and, you know, the person who really got it going. So that's important, an important part of the story not told here. So very honored to have you here today. Thank you. Yay. And moving on to Cody. I love Cody. I'm just going to read this line because you know,
Don't even know it says anymore.
I'm going to read this, and I loved it. It was like emerging avenues of advanced modularity across the software stack. Just that. It sounds so amazing. I'm like, whoa, Matrix. But Yvonne's part of the reason why we've sustained this emerging community of practice, really. She's been pivotal in really starting it up with Saeed as well, and a bunch of other people, including Maria, who's present here too. And just really a great colleague. I don't know how she manages her life, but I'm just as busy, maybe. I don't know. We can arm wrestle busyness, but you win. So anyway, Yvonne's, and also a computer scientist. So any code questions, just go to Yvonne now. No, okay, maybe later. Okay, so Yvonne, awesomeness, and then Larry, yay. And I promise not to embarrass Larry. Sahid said don't embarrass Larry. But anyway, you just have to read Larry's bio to know how amazing he is and all the work that he's done. And this shows a lot of the professional work that he's done, but in terms of also my knowledge of Larry in education, having been a colleague for many, many years, over 15 at the MDM program at the Center for Digital Media, he's also been really pivotal. He introduced me to fancy words like pipeline. Yeah, and this thing called dailies. Anyway, really great to have Larry here as well to co-facilitate the discussion. And each of the 3 people and the others here are very, very aware of some of the challenges, some of the obstacles that we face, some of the gaps that are present when we try to support and sustain emerging tech development. I'm not going to go into my definition of emerging technology, by the way. I did that at a birds of a feather. It took too long. I had 4 definitions because not even I could decide for myself which one I wanted more. So I'll leave that for you guys to engage in as we transition now into these magical facilitated sessions in which the first thing I want you to do is for sure introduce yourselves and your experience with emerging technology. And then after that, cool, go into some of the gaps, some of the obstacles. As students as well, as graduates of the program, Sean, as current students that are graduating, as students at UBC, it's your knowledge as well in terms of the gaps or the obstacles that you have faced are really important for us to know as well. So please do share those and don't feel like, oh, maybe I don't know or I shouldn't speak because I'm a student, because that's just not true. Yeah. Okay, cool. So magically, wow. Okay, so 1, 2. No, I don't want to do that. How about we're going to do this? Team 1, Larry and Maher. Where would you like to position yourselves in this? How about room over there? Good echo chamber. And why don't we have a few people accompany them? That would be good. And then can you help me figure out who on the Zoom call to go with? Maybe we'll actually have them, whoever's on the Zoom can hang out with them. Okay. So you're on the Zoom?
Oh, hi, cyber folks.
Are you? Yeah, you could be. Okay. So why don't you go over there, Sean? Why don't you head over with them? Tanya, for sure. Hang out here. You can go with another group.
Oh, okay.
Okay, cool. Come up. That you guys might want to add to the conversation. And thanks, Alex, for that comment. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to zoom through and share insights, starting with Yvonne Cody, because she's right here. Now, because Andrew is setting up a mic this way, if you don't mind, I know this is hard for you, but if you could project.
I will try.
And it's insights, and then Brenda can help you fill in gaps a little bit.
My partner in crime.
Cool, come on up, yeah.
And we sort of went through a whole bunch of obstacles. This actually lasted most of our sessions.
Oh, no, that's what I anticipated that. And don't worry now, I'm giving you a minute and a half, so
Okay.
that's all.
But Maria and Curie, if people don't know, and you'll learn more about that. We have a real talk, I think, about maybe sort of an institutional perspective
Mm,
on, shared values and how important it is if we want to move forward as a community and do progressive things and provide high quality experiences for people, for people in the classroom, for people, for grad students learning, all of these things. We need these shared values and we need people with passion to be able to pursue it. But that there's actually a lot of obstacles within our institutions that we continually hit, including practices that really should have been outdated many years ago, like huge final exams in gymnasiums, etc. Which they still happen. So I think we had sort of a kind of a hey, and this will lead to our next. I'll stop, but I want to
keep going. It's all good.
a bit. That we kind of have to get together and really shake things up. And maybe do things that are about improving the quality of the experience in education and research.
Okay, cool. Now hold on to that because that's going to be part 2, where
Yeah.
you're all going to present the solutions.
solutions.
But it's good. It's good to understand the territory.
Okay, that's our territory. Is it Brenda? Did you want to add anything?
No, you covered it.
Okay.
And any, well, no, it's okay.
We'll have more to say for our solutions, I think, here.
Cool.
We fell into solutions,
Yay.
Yes.
but we wanted to cause a revolution and everyone's invited. I'm gonna, if I could.
Yeah, please.
That one of the challenges that we face is our own regulatory system that we're operating within around what constitutes a degree, is
Mm,
qualified to teach courses that contribute to an academic credential, What's the timeline for completing that academic credential? We need to blow up the degree quality assurance board. Don't put my name under that here.
This is not being recorded.
But, but
I hear
that
you.
is one
I
of
hear
the
you.
Barriers that we need to
Yeah.
address as a coalition.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, I think really important. I completely agree. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yay. Let's give some affirmations. Turning it over to Farhad and MZ. Why don't you come up? I'll project you.
So welcome, everyone. We had a fascinating
top
group
left?
with the wonderful MK and I think Sarah and Ali and Sandy and Wani. And we tried to focus on obstacles, which wasn't hard because that people tend to be negative and critical. And there was a real focus, I think, that theme emerged about how the pandemic became this inspiration or this, opportunity to start to adopt a lot of the emerging technologies, move online. And it was identified that some professors, because maybe they're early adopters or the nature of the discipline, were bringing in parallel different kinds of learning technologies, right? Their own Discord servers, experimenting with different apps. That then became a problem when it hit the kind of institutional machine that you're part of and we're talking about, where now that we're in this kind of post-pandemic environment, a lot of institutions are retracting.
Yeah.
They're regressing, they're devolving back to the old ways. At KPU, we're 70% online, 30% online, 70% in person. But it's not really strategic, right? It's sort of across the board. At other institutions, there's no number or whatever, right? And Sarah pointed out that one obstacle she encountered as a student, she's in the cognitive science program and also co-op at Sauder here, is you would get a situation where you'd encounter all these amazing technologies, but there wasn't necessarily the training or the information or the support for the students, for the UX, right? The user experience, which is what Sandy's sort of new job is at UBC, is partly about that. And so we lost sight of the human interface with all this amazing tech, right? And we can't lose that because a thing like a pandemic is a black swan event. It's once in a life, and we can use that to really push the institutions because they're these huge inertial organizations. They're oil tankers, and we can pivot, right? But if you pivot and you come back 360 to exactly where you were, what was the point of that, right? You talked about a revolution, right? It's kind of revolution, right? You see, with my Persian name and my color, I can't use the word explode or bomb or blow up. You're not recording, right? Okay. But so we have to transform the institution and take them to the next level. Okay, thank you.
Yay. Awesome. Thanks. Wow. And you know what? Both comments made me think about these strategic visions. It's a visioning process that we're starting to see crop up at different institutions. And it'd be really awesome if there was an affirmation that we survived 2 years being remote only, most.
Actually, if I could add, I don't have the stats with me right now, but just this week, Stats Canada pushed out their report on the revenues of post-secondary institutions during the pandemic. And they were record-breaking surplus revenues.
I know.
In post-secondary education in the virtual remote world. So I do think that we can leverage not only the literally billions of dollars of new revenue generated through the pandemic in the post-secondary institutions using that virtual reality mode and remote learning, but also that we know that it's the right thing to do. So we can lever two things that speak to university administrators. One, it's good for students, but two, it's also good for your bottom line.
Nice.
Claudia knows better than anyone.
Thank you.
Not better than anyone, but I contributed in thought. My question is the barrier the culture of the university and the comfort zone of our colleagues who were pushed out of that comfort zone together with the rest of the planet during the pandemic and are really happy to be back where they're comfortable and not having to deal with things in that way. And so this, we have the data on so many things in so many disciplines that the virtual is equivalent and sometimes even better than the traditional. And people are still resistant to it due to, I think, sort of an ingrained academic culture that we find ourselves in, a traditionalist approach to learning and to student interactions. There's little focus on student experience. There's focus on academic achievement.
Yeah.
And that cultural shift, it goes beyond the people in this room. I think we can point it out, but we need institutional leadership who is willing to go and change the culture of post-secondary education in Canada.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And Tanya. Nice. So Larry, Maher, come on up, share. And Tanya and Tara, just given what Claudia just said, there'll be an exam at the end of this session. So if you can just memorize what they said and regurgitate it. Thanks.
So our discussion kind of started out at, I would say, a grassroots level where we started looking at, well, how do we share information? How do we learn? And we started talking about tools because we realized that sometimes it's the daily interaction in the casual conversation where some really vital information is passed, right? And then there was a comment as far as, are we giving the students enough tools? And does the faculty have enough tools? And do they mix? And John started talking about a project that he's doing for the law courts right now, where basically they came up with a horizontal tool. So it's all peer-based now. Everybody's sharing the same information. Because the problem is, once you dump out a tool set, somebody wants to be on Discord. No, I don't like Discord. I'm going to be over here on Zoom. Oh, that doesn't work for me because I want something like Miro, because now we can add stickies or what have you. And so it started boiling down to, what is that foundational tool for the community? Whether it's something that's traditional now, or is it something that has to be built? Because I was telling them about an experience we had yesterday at SIGGRAPH with a friend of mine from Brazil who has built some really cool metaverses. And he leaves one open on Spatial where people just go there and contribute to it. They could be there by themselves, but the information is there for the community and it's on a common tool. And so that's where we're starting to see those gaps is, where's that common meeting place out there that everybody's comfortable in, whether it's 25 people or you're there by yourself and you get that information out there. So that was a big part of our discussion.
Cool. Thank you. Okay. All right. So that was fun and we could spend hours there, right? On trying to unlock all the challenges and trying to articulate them. So now I want to shift us though. I want to shift us to what are solutions? And I know that is probably, and like listening to everyone, I could start to hear them and what those are. But let's articulate those in a different map. Go into the same breakout rooms and do that. And then we'll come back again and share. In between, please grab refreshments because it all has to be gone in an hour. Thank you. Really great insights. Yeah, lots to think about in terms of that. So now let's take that energy and shift into solution-based. And there's a map there that talks about bad ideas. It's something based on an article I've read, why bad ideas are good ideas. So go crazy with ideas. We have a couple of newcomers who will join groups. Thank you. Thanks everyone on Zoom too.
these days, it's like if you come together as a group of avatars, it becomes quite obvious whether or not you're engaged or not. You can't just kind of drift off. So I think for me, it really is finding that comfortable environment that really opens up the doors for anyone to make an offer.
I think something that's sort of been working when we were studying at CDM is the closer that a tool can be to like a live experience, the more people are willing to share. So something like Discord, where you could have like many people in like video calls, chat calls, and chat while you text, something that allows you to share your work in the chat with ease. Because like something like Zoom, like if you want to send an image, then it sends as like a download. Like,
Juice, please. Juice.
Yes.
Juice.
Well, sure. And you also need room for those sidebar comments, right? So when someone walks in with buckets of juice, we can still keep talking about the main subject matter. So it just doesn't turn into white noise.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like something where communication is live, and you look at like when you're working on such a bad example, but like a Google Doc, where you're in a video chat, or you're chatting with your friends and you're working on something together. There's that collaboration that's happening, and people feel very involved and willing to point out things that they're observing, versus when work is offline and they're just sort of like, okay, I did this thing. You send a message and wait for somebody to respond. Then they go in and edit. The process becomes very slow, and people, usually need to work faster so that they learn better.
John, I don't know if you heard when I summarized what happened in our breakout, but I used your example of the MDM project that you're on right now as an example for a horizontal tool. I'd be interested in hearing what were your requirements for that tool as far as being a communicator and collaborator?
Well, there's you may be sort of.
John, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear
Is
me?
he muted?
Maybe he's in a maybe they can hear us.
I see his head's moving around, but are we muted?
You can't hear me?
Oh, yeah, we got you now.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened there. I remuted and then unmuted myself, and that seemed to work. There are two different things, and I think you may be slightly conflating them, Larry. One is the Moot Court project, which we're doing at the law school with the Emerging Media Lab.
Right, okay.
And the other is what we've been doing at the CDM, which has been in my tax project, where we have been trying to do some access to justice research and design for the public. So in terms of the horizontal, both are horizontal projects. But in terms of the pedagogic one, it's really the Moot Court project.
Right. So, but my question was, what were the requirements there? Because we were talking about tools and how people communicate and all.
So I'll address the Moot Court one primarily because the Access to Justice project is really about facilitating researchers right now as much as anything, and I just put that in a different basket academically. Not that it's not important, but it's not as important to me anyways as facilitating students working together. So we backed off on a lot of things, and I'll be brief. But Saeed can also speak to this if he's around. We backed off on VR, for example, because even though it's absolutely possible to do this in VR and would even be better, it would be less accessible to the 150 law students who really need this. So it would be a much more selective or a much more narrow process. So we, in terms of the requirements, I think originally we thought our requirement was going to be fidelity and reality and making the moot court feel really like a moot court. And we turned rapidly, and I guess this is me being consistent in part, to the horizontality of it and making sure that every student could access it and use it, and thinking about accessibility if you were hearing impaired, if you were a hearing impaired law student or a visually impaired law student. We really spent, we ended up pivoting towards accessibility, horizontal accessibility, if you will. I hope that's that answers your question in part.
It does. So basically, if I can boil down my interpretation, it's well, accessibility is extremely important, and I imagine that also harkens simplicity, so that it's an easy learning curve. Not a lot of bells and whistles that go through to make your point.
Absolutely, but we've never lost sight, and Saeed's an important part of this process, we've never lost sight of the bells and whistles. As we do this, VR is on the roadmap. Artificial intelligence versions of our Supreme Court of Canada judges, right down to their personalities and how they ask questions, all that is doable and on our roadmap. So all of those things are still there. We haven't taken them away, but we really put the immediate student interest first. Saeed, do you want to say anything more about that?
I'm sitting beside the camera, John. Yeah, so it's what you said is basically covers everything. We never want to try something just because we want to use technology. It's always the solution or the problem first, and then technology as a solution comes after. So, I mean, when we are talking about emerging tech, really, depending on the context, anything that's not being used already, that's why we had some change of definition with Patrick. Anything that's not throughout the institution being used, we call it emerging technology for our use case. It might be old news outside university, but for us, it's emerging. So
right, exactly. Like I'm sure Miro was emerging tech
exactly
for all of us, but it was just a digital version of using Post-it notes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Any other thoughts?
I think one thing that really helped connect people in the pandemic, not in terms of learning, but something that is used, I don't know if you've heard of Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's a game where you basically have an avatar and you're in a virtual space, but not like headsets. It's more on like, you can play it on the Switch or like the Game Boy, which was back in the day. But yeah, you can interact with people, you can do tasks. And I think the big part of like what made people feel closer to others was the interactiveness of it. Even though you can't like voice chat with people on it or see their video, just being able to do tasks with them together. And I feel like a lot of teachers, like a cousin of mine, take inspiration from that and sort of like set up a classroom, for example, in Animal Crossing or even in like a Minecraft server, and they sort of like dedicated like spaces for their students so that they could interact with each other in sort of like a gamified interactive virtual space. I don't know how relevant that is, but it is pretty cool. I mean, it feels more interactive than just on a Google Doc, but how relevant it would be to post-secondary and like higher levels of education, I'm not really sure.
Maybe using that idea, like when we converting to like sharing the note, my personal note sharing with you, because the Minecraft and the Animal Crossing, the main idea is I create my own world. During the pandemic, I cannot invite you to my home, but I have another virtual home. So come here, see what I made it. Same as Minecraft, there is one. So in terms of like education class, what we are sharing is like, this is my note. This is what I take focus on. This is what I learned. So let's share. There's my sharing experience, and there's like digital sharing experience. They how students learn each other, I guess. And the other thing is
Dr. Claudia can kind of find out that like a note is going around, and there was one exam question, everyone got answer wrong, and he found out there was one note who somebody made beautiful note, and the beautiful note information was wrong. Everyone was sharing this one. Since it's visually beautiful, everyone got wrong understanding of certain subject. Because like, but we are high-end the post-secondary education, so whatever students sharing it, there must be one time or one session, teacher or subject matter expert or like TA just overviewing what's going on. Are they sharing the right information? Maybe those kind of process pipelines should be built in there. Because horizontal sharing is great, but in terms of teaching purpose or learning purpose, sometimes it might be dangerous. Because they are still learning. They still learning what is absolutely right, what is absolutely wrong. Those things. So they are in gray area and figuring out heading to like right way. So sometimes they got wrong answer and nobody judging it, and they ended up with wrong answer.
So even if we have the same tool, sometimes we don't use it the same way.
Yeah. So it's kind of like we are like one of the experiences using AI in our life. We use try to make some bot smart, so make the regular conversation with a bot. Then we put IBM, Watson, and plus, because it's regular conversation, we put lots of movie script data in it. Yes, if the bot really speak really like normal life person, then there's one case trigger Samuel L. Jackson movie. You know how he speak, lots of effort. The bot starts using effort in front of the future. Yes, it's realistic, but we found out this is wrong way to using AI. Because there must be some kind of information filter we have to insert it for the situation. Yeah, that's one of my experience.
Okay, so that's a gap, but we need a solution.
Yeah, we need a solution. Maybe build pipeline. Like when if we think about the horizontal learning as a tool, as a solution, then maybe we need to build one more pipeline. If somebody needs to observe those information a little bit. Are they sharing right ones or are they sharing wrong ones? Because internet is free world. Like, do you remember when long time ago Wikipedia came out and professor said don't use Wikipedia, nobody knows writing what, and nowadays almost everyone is using Wikipedia, right? Because like time after time there's like lots of observation of those data and correction. So Wikipedia data is kind of right. So maybe in post-secondary education wise, when we are allowing students like to sharing horizontally, yeah, maybe we absolutely need some kind of staging, somebody looking those shared data and correcting it. Maybe we need those ones.
So is that an individual or is it the community that reacts to it? But in the use case that you stated, it was like everyone gravitated towards that one piece of data and used it, right? Rather than someone fact checking that.
Yeah, so say it. I don't know if there's like if we are observing as a community, and we have to think about who is in the community. Is there any person is absolutely something that expert what this community talking about? If there's like law example community and we are talking about law, if John is there, yes, John can check those ones. Like if we are talking about anatomy, if Dr. Claudia Craig is there, yes, we can check with her. And maybe when we build the community, we may purposely need to put some subject matter expert in that community, then make community more trustable or maybe fast building as an information sharing community. I lost.
Like Reddit. Like Reddit. That's open source. There's like pros and cons to each, right? Like if because I was thinking if you have like some place that's centralized, right? Like, okay, we pin the correct information at the top. Now everybody have fun and create your designs. But if that information is wrong, you know, all the information is wrong.
Actually, Twitter was going to come with that. Originally, what Elon Musk wanted to do is make Twitter like a digital town, right? Where is open source, so that everyone can see what's the best correct action for that community. Right.
Yeah.
So
And then if you sort of flatten that out, right, like, you know, a lot of different sources giving a lot of information, then you don't really know who's right or who's wrong or what's the correct. Everything sort of just becomes a,
Because there's no hierarchy.
yeah.
Right.
So on the one hand, if you have the hierarchy, then like, okay, if the top is wrong, everyone's wrong. But if it's too flat, then you don't know which one. So both of them pose different problems.
I mean, like, I think, you know, like archive some traditional like policies, and then because let's say things are updated, like if you're updating software, you have to update the hardware, firmware, and so forth. So like it's always changing. It doesn't really stay the same. You know, I mean, it's kind of like that. Our culture, you know, maybe last few hundred years, a few thousand years, it just constantly changed, right? So our generation is, I think, I feel like it's rapidly growing, changing way too fast, and so information is coming like every millisecond. So it's like I don't think it's possible, but I think it's just somebody who can like who can update the forum, you know, pretty much every day. You know, I used to I was part of a forum when I was younger. We always have moderators just constantly just seeing what is the hottest topic, what's trending, like kind of like YouTube, Twitter. You know, you just know what's trending. The algorithm is gonna be like, right? So that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Hey, so John, in your case, how is the information fact checked in your pipeline?
Well, when it comes to the moot court application, it's really the law students who are making the arguments. So what's in there are a bunch of questions that my colleague Nikos Harris, who teaches criminal law at Allard and is one of the great law professors we have at UBC, really one of the best, of the very best, certainly according to students. He writes the questions. So there's not a lot of fact checking because it's all a student collaboration tool, and the students are supplying the information. In terms of the Access to Justice project at the CDM, that's much more complex. There's any number of law students and master's law students, and of course the CDM students. And because it's such a research-based project in terms of getting data out of all the access to justice sources we have in the legal system, it's just massive and massively important, because it's an example of garbage in, garbage out when you come to the data. So what's really cool is, at least at this stage, the moot court app is very simple in terms of checking everything. There's very, very little to be checked.
Got it. So do we have any solutions?
Is this mainly for lawyers?
Yeah, that particular application, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Law students.
Oh, law students.
Well, so sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but the moot court app, people have raised with us that it would be really great, a great tool for defending a master's thesis or a PhD thesis, that there's other very similar applications, or even for undergrads preparing presentations and things like that. So it's not exclusive to lawyers.
Right.
The Access to Justice project, that's not exclusive to lawyers, but very much exclusive to the legal system.
I mean, so I'll go back to, you know, policies, going back to archives, and thinking what's right for that period, I guess. The problem is the archive is so big, it's millions of whatever information, billions, whatever. So maybe in the future they have, like, you know, AI that can go through the archives and find the correct policy. Possibly. Yeah.
When it comes to like collaboration, collaborative work, and how do you fact check and make sure people are like learning, I guess, how do you say this, like progressively, you know what I mean? I think what works is sort of, especially when it comes to online, like the whole Discord thing where you have like a group of people. It's like, okay, these are the approved like moderators. If you have any questions, just go ask them. You can have a list like designated to specific fields. And then I think maybe that's just like, with the tech that we have now, the best way to sort of pair people up to just learn like properly. Because people learn differently, but that's just the best way I think to guide people.
I think that's why the justice system is really messy right now.
Yeah.
Because of that. Everyone has different opinions. Like somebody kills somebody, they can get out of jail the next day. It's super wild.
Yeah.
And so, like I say, it's going on for thousands of years. Back then, you could kill people, and now you can't, right? And maybe they could now still, in behind doors. So yeah, it really depends on the person's ethics. Like kind of like Eric Snowden, he's like talking about security, data leak, and things like that. So identity. So like it can be used for good, it can be used for bad. It depends who are these decision makers, these moderators, policy makers, right? And so yeah, if it's open source, everyone can share their opinion for the greater good, right? What's the greater good, right? If this guy kills someone, definitely gonna bring it back out, right?
Right. But you also need the community to continue to trust the tool as well.
Yeah. Well, and that's why they should rotate councils, like different people should rotate, not have somebody that's there for a long time. Just because they want to keep a job, they have this egotistical thing, they have to be there. So yeah, we should keep rotating people, I think, and give them that chance to experience. And I think that's the best, because cultures don't last very long. They usually crumble very fast. Rome, Egypt, right? Babylon. Like it's just leadership. Bad leadership results in this, right? Good leaderships can run for a long time, right? And then pass on and mentor somebody else to take over that torch. Just keep it like that.
We had a tool that we used back when I was working in Saudi. It was basically like it would ask anonymously all the workers or employees or whoever just a question about the office environment, like how do you feel about this, how are you working with this, do you have any concerns about leadership, about anything, and that information was all anonymous. So like if a lot of negative answers were pointed towards someone specifically, then you would know like, okay, there's something wrong with this like group of leadership, and it needs to be addressed.
There has to be proper democracy, right? And so people can vote out, this person, these guys aren't doing their job, right? And so, and that's the problem with even presidential elections. They stay there for too long, and there's not enough rotation for change, right?
I think the big part of all of this is the red tape of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
I think like it's
Brenda. Okay. Go ahead, and MC, you're up. All right, so first of all, was that hard?
No.
Was it hard to go to solutions without reverting to the obstacles? Because I'm curious, right? Yeah. Yeah, which is
hard to do.
yeah. So that's one thing I wanted to acknowledge, right? That's going to happen in this process too. We're going to come up with lots of great ideas that then we go, okay, who's going to implement that?
Does anyone remember the Dave Allen film?
Yes.
The British meeting was sat after with a glass of whiskey. I feel like that right now. That's why I have the 12-step program for making universities more perfect. And so we don't need anyone to go after this. This is definitive. And MK here is going to, I think, support us with. It doesn't matter.
Here, let me flip a share screen.
So number one, we need to understand that the magic happens before and after class, not just during class. And therefore, you need to create spaces and opportunities for students to talk, to get together, to have encounters with their faculty, with the professors, because all kinds of creativity and learning and understanding happen there. Number two, we need people, programs, and policies to teach and support faculty who want to experiment, who want to innovate. We need flexible models of teaching and learning, including hybrid, high flex, flipped classrooms, all of these things. These things aren't new, but it's new in how to integrate it, how to do it, how to support and sustain it. Our teaching and learning centers, and every institution has one, needs to get to know that we also have an IT department and they need to work together and not against each other, right? Because you all experience that. The institution wants to limit liability. They don't want a whole bunch of diverse different programs. They want standardization across the institution. Teaching and learning centers want to support faculty to try new things, and those two things are incompatible. So the silos need to be broken down. Here's a controversial one. We need to hire faculty using different criteria. What? You want early adopters, hire early adopters. You know, try to teach your dog new tricks. We're talking about higher ed, but it was pointed out that some of this stuff happens in K-12, right? And I know the Ministry of Education, which is different than our Ministry of Higher Education, reformed education practice in British Columbia. I don't know that faculty understand what that means when they see students in first year and what those students are now going to be expecting and the ways they're thinking. And at the end of the day, we're looking at value and meaning, and we have to keep our minds on that goal, that there is a point and a purpose to all of this. We're not just experimenting with emerging technologies because they're fun and interesting. Do they actually work? Do they support our goals? And if they do, use them and expand. But if they don't, you don't have to use it, right? We can't throw everything out in support of this one priority. The classroom is a laboratory for learning. And so let's treat it that way. Let's get rid of the blackboards, the whiteboards, the rows of chairs, and make it truly something where that laboratory approach can actually happen. And one of our people said that let's remember that learning and working and the integration of those two through, you know, co-op and practicum and other types of work integrated learning was always the solution, and it still is the solution. So let's not lose that. The idea of workplace innovation, where you tap into the creativity of your own workers, your staff, your students, your administrators, your faculty, all of them, to improve the workplace itself, that there's so much innovative ideas amongst workers, that's the concept of workplace innovation, needs to be somehow harnessed. And then the final point for making universities better was we all agreed that Patrick is a wizard. And that, you know, speaks for itself. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Farhad. Thank you, MZ. Awesome. Should we go in reverse order, or Vaughn, are you dying to go?
Oh, I'm after Larry,
Larry and Harry. Okay, good. Yes.
So it's the high chair this time?
More right.
Mm.
Like at the university always about faculty and students. And in between them, all of those rules is made by those staff members. Who is that faculty or who is actually skilled to make those types making those types of tools. But those staff members, because of the funding or whatever, keep changing.
Mm.
So the legacy is
No, and
Thanks, Sean.
That was quite a bit of our conversation right there, because we talked a lot about how hierarchy can be inhibiting, you know, because we were talking about the tools and how people use them, and there's also the danger of misinformation out there and inaccuracy, and how do you deal with that? And then we started talking about moderators, but then all of a sudden we're building a hierarchy again. So we were looking for tools that everyone can trust, because we need comfortable environments. We need to be able to speak openly and make offers, especially from some of the quieter members of the community, because sometimes they can be very impactful and very thoughtful. And then I mentioned that one of my favorite communication tools that I experienced out in the industry was at Pacific Data Images, and it was a simple email system called Soapbox, and it was completely anonymous. Header was stripped out. You could speak your mind. You could talk about whether or not you disliked the toilet paper in the place or you had an idea for a film. It did not matter. It went up to the president, and I lobbed a few things out there as a young employee just to see if anything would happen. And things did change. It actually, yes, it was.
Is that where South
better.
Park came up with the toilet paper character?
They went for the Charmin. It's great. So yeah, so a lot of it was, and John was talking about the fact that that idea of accessibility, that we keep things simple and make things very comfortable for anyone in the community is extremely important. So those were our targets right there, is to make it comfortable and accessible.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yay. Did I miss anything?
Awesome.
Okay.
I can, this will be a little bit of I have to do an ode to Larry, first of all, because I remember when I was visiting the CDM when I met a lot of you people, because I'm on an island usually, a small island in Victoria. Yeah, exactly, alone on the island. And wow, Larry opened up my eyes to so many things. And in addition to like just all that's going on in SIGGRAPH this week and all the volunteer time you put into SIGGRAPH, Larry, for making that community happen. And I think the vibe that I got from being around Larry and meeting the SIGGRAPH community, and then later meeting everyone, like the CDM really stood out to me as being a place where, hey, it's SFU, BCIT, Emily Carr, and UBC. Oh, of course, I totally blanked on UBC. That's so bad. That's so bad.
It's so good.
But I was like, that was not planned. I'm really sorry. That was just old age. But and I sort of thought, okay, well, this is how we can do it, is if we all work together. It's like, can we put you, Vic, on the side too? And it was like, no, but okay. But in those days, Venture Labs did have UVic, BCIT, Emily Carr, and SFU. So that was very interesting to me. So what all of that is to say that in my life, being able to meet a lot of the people who I know here has come because we came together and we did things together. And that really a multi-institutional, Farhad, your 12 points, absolutely 100%, couldn't agree more. And having Kwantlen and all of the institutions really make some kind of a lobbying kind of body, that just sort of, and I volunteer right here, right now to do it myself. I would love anybody who would like to join. I think I learned a lot from our group about solutions today, that maybe just like Larry was saying, that they actually, it's about them being comfortable and people being comfortable using the tools. And in our group, Brenda was mentioning, using TV in Mexico for educational purposes, and Maria's a real proponent for radio and just sort of trying to get things going, but there's no real commitment to content creation maybe through some of those mediums, but maybe there's ways that we can certainly want to introduce a lot of the tools that we have that we know that could work very well. Claudia's work with the Hive is so amazing, but like, how do we get people in and started? And Ron was even saying, I can't even keep up with technology as a consumer. I just want to learn about everything, and it's all happening so fast, it's kind of overwhelming. So I'd like to propose, and I don't want to misrepresent our group here, especially putting Carrie on the spot as an associate dean of a university from the United States that came into Vancouver. And what are you doing here? Well, you're globalizing a lot of things in education. And I'm behind your ideas behind doing it and bringing people together. And probably, a global coalition is great, but certainly local ones could do a lot. And I know that Sang has always been a person who took ideas. If you don't know Sang, she worked for a lot of years with My Taxis, was trying to make things great for students. Took it from a student-oriented perspective and said, what are they going to get out of this? And I think our group came to the conclusion that it's got to be student-centric. We have to ask them, what's going to work for you, was what Claudia was saying. And then that's how we can get behind the value proposition of how we really support people, is it comes from them. And if our institutions don't want to listen, maybe the government will. And certainly some academics don't want to get out of their comfort zone, and that's fine. I totally understand that. I'm that person sometimes too. But there's a lot of, as Farhad was saying, there's a lot of new people that would love the opportunity to be involved in educational experiences for people. And it's just a different kind of system than the one we've created that we really do need to deconstruct or start to look at other opportunities. So I volunteer to help lead a coalition, multi-institutional. I'd like to get as many people on board as possible, but I'd certainly be absolutely happy to take forward any of the ideas from this community to some of the people that might work.
Awesome. Yay. Thank you. Brenda, did you want to add anything to that? Okay. That was it. Okay. Oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
We recognize that the current structure is built on existing power structures and existing patriarchies and colonizing institutions. And that what we're proposing puts those structures into question and questions the power structures and questions the power holders. And that is going to make them very uncomfortable. And that's going to be a resistance we're going to come up against in our revolutionary enclave of whatever that's going to be. But I think, you know, the way we're proposing to revolutionize or change higher education through democratization of, you know, by using digital means and, you know, who has the power, who has the knowledge. We have to move away from this top-down perspective of the professor knows everything, the students absorb. The leader knows everything, the underlings follow, right? That's not the future.
And we gatekeep to decide who can even
Yes.
start the journey.
Absolutely.
But I think too, that the coalition needs not only the post-secondary institutions, the coalition will be more powerful if it has a really strong corporate partner message with that. We need to also leverage the 3,000 employers, partners in learning that we have supporting us in co-ops, for example, and other experiential learning and research projects. They also need to join us in saying, here's the change that we need to see in post-secondary education. And so if the universities are saying this is what education should be, and if the local economy drivers are saying this is what education needs to be, who is saying that it needs to stay the same?
Good questions. Yeah, really good. Thank you. And thanks, everyone. I'm not going to kick us all out that quickly. But at this point, it'd be great to just to continue conversation, really. A lot of themes have been brought up. I was thinking as well as we were talking, I tried not to get too distracted by you when you were speaking, Carrie, because behind you, there's a dance troupe. And they're going for it. And I'm just stay focused, Patrick. Stay focused. This is important. Dance. Stay important. But yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for the generosity of your time.
Me everywhere I go.
That's what you need to change policy.
Shayla, we're fly girls.
Nice. Love it. Love it. Yeah. Yeah, so thanks everyone for your time, your generosity of ideas and sharing. And I think this is another beginnings, right? And for sure, I will join the fiesta with you. And for anyone else who's interested, I think it's important work that we're all doing. The one thing that came up from all of the presentations to me, and something I've been thinking about is, do we have a challenge with talking about the value proposition of what we do? And and each of us have our own answers to that, right? Each of us have tried to articulate it in speaking and in writing on the value proposition of teaching, emerging tech development, and the value of technology and its giving of new student experiences and how it affords that. So I completely resonate, Carrie, with that question. Like, I would even add to it, if I may, who's listening? Yeah. So thank you for that, and may we continue with our battles. May we support each other in those battles as we move forward, and may they turn into negotiations, because I think there's enough huge amount of intelligence in this room that we can find the words. Maria will help us find the words, and we can support each other as we continue to grow and prosper in this area. So yeah, thanks everyone. Yay! Yeah. And now the music comes on, and you go eat the rest of that food. Cool. Yeah, thanks Brenda, thanks MZ, thanks Maher, thanks again Larry, Farhad, and Yvonne for hosting. Yeah. Thank you, and thanks Saeed. Thank you Andrew. Andrew, yay! And Tina, where's Tina? Tina was doing all the photography of all of you. Don't worry, it'll make you look good. But if you do protest, just go talk with her.
Yeah. Thank you for organizing. It's so great to have you back. Looking forward to exciting stuff.
Part of the tradition of MCOP is to create a community, and because we went into breakout sessions, that's a good idea. Anyone, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but anyone who's new to this group may be one of the different so we all know who they are. No pressure.
Yeah.
Or you can do that in personal conversation too.
I've been pretty vocal on Carrie Chaslin, but I really just want to add one more element for the minutes of the session. We've talked about a lot of the barriers, the organizations, the regulatory bodies, the presidents, the university leadership. But one group that often gets overlooked, and they're very, very powerful, and it's the boards that our presidents report up to. And so we need to also include in our efforts to really get at some of those board members and help them break out of their own personal experience as a university student and what they conceive of the university experience to be, so that when their presidents come with the strat plans, the boards are going to get behind it and not be afraid that they're not continuing through with their fiduciary responsibilities as a board.
Nice. That's great.